Welcome to the Save vs. Poison podcast, the podcast dedicated to gaming, general geekery, and enduring sobriety in an ever-maddening society, with your host Will and two guys that probably live under his stairs. If you're an addict, know an addict, or are just interested in exploring the outer mysteries of geekery, you're in the right place. Without further ado, let's get to the show. All right, everybody. Welcome back to Save vs. Poison. It's a solo episode. Nothing to be done about it. You're going to have to sit here and listen to me and only me. If you're on the YouTubes, you can look me right in the eye and see the just levels of loneliness I'm feeling without my two co-hosts. No, this week was just rough. We had scheduling issues all over the place, and that's mostly my fault. It had nothing to do with my two co-hosts. They were both actually clamoring to get to recording. They were like, listen, if we don't record, we're off. That'll be it. And it'll just be you forever alone. Forever alone. Except for like this picture of the Lionel Johnson up here in the right-hand side of the screen if you're watching on YouTube. You're welcome, by the way. Doesn't that guy look great? God, that picture's beautiful. Friggin' love that picture. You want to know why I love that picture? I love that picture because it's basically just Tywin Lannister in green. That's so glorious. If you haven't seen this model, you should really go check out this model. So tonight we're going to talk a little bit about rock bottom. What does rock bottom look like to you? And it's not just what I call my ass. All right? Rock bottom. It's a state of being. A shitty state of being. But a turning point for a lot of us. And then in the latter half of the show, we'll talk a little bit about Games Workshop's Warhammer 40K. I have some mild thoughts, some thinker thoughts on it, as somebody that mostly just collects and paints these days. Although I do have the desire to get out there and play a game or two, man. Like, so much money wasted otherwise, considering that I think I've put together 10% of my models and haven't played a game with them. So it's a lot of money to just sit there rotting in a bunch of boxes over. Yeah. My name is Will, and I'm an alcoholic. We'll just start off with that. We'll just go straight into that, right? As an alcoholic, I had basically a pretty easy week for the most part. Although I'm getting to a point where I'm kind of struggling a little bit with some new people coming into my life and trying to figure out when I can talk to them about the fact that I'm an addict in kind of an organic way. Usually it happens that like something will come up where I'll be able to say, oh, I have a podcast, I do a Twitch stream, and they'll ask me what. And of course that's a really natural, break into that particular vein of conversation. But the last couple of weeks, I've had opportunity to make acquaintance with somebody in my professional life that's very new, and I'm still not sure 100% where they sit in terms of how they would react to somebody saying, well, I'm an alcoholic in recovery. I don't know yet. Most of the people that I've told have been either somebody that wasn't part of a hierarchy that I needed to worry about, or was somebody that I'd known for a really long time, and telling them was more just a like coming clean at the end of a longer conversation that had been happening for a really, really long time, right? So this new set of people that I want to be able to open up to, I'm just not there quite yet, but some of the conversational topics have been coming back around to alcohol. And while there is the part of my brain that doesn't want to just throw that right out there, the fact that I'm an alcoholic, there is a part of me that really wants to be able to put an end to some of the conversation around booze. Like, one of these people just recently was telling about time that they spent in Germany during Oktoberfest. Now, I can go to Oktoberfest, but I'd be lying to you if I said that the reason that I want to go to Oktoberfest isn't for the beer. Like, I would want to go for the beer. Like, German beers were my shit. That was my jam, man. I love German beers. And knowing that I'm never going to be able to indulge in a German beer again in my life makes me a little bit sad. So when they're telling a story about doing something as awesome as going to Oktoberfest, and this is somebody that doesn't have a problem with substance abuse, and they're telling me about their adventures through drunken adventures, sure, but that's a part of their life that they left behind 40 years ago. So it's not like they're living it right this instant. If you're asking 40 years ago, yes, I work with some older people, some older human beings, older professionals. But so many of us do. Then we get into the like this week. So that was a couple of weeks ago that happened. This week, though, telling me about a Scotch cellar. Like, I would have loved to have had a Scotch cellar. Love to have been able to look at friends, say, hey, why don't you come on over? I've got this great Scotch collection. We can try a couple of them. Wouldn't that be interesting? I know my friend Jim. Some of you who are Amp Guardians might know him as Kuno. He is a big, gigantic Scotch and whiskey guy, and it would have been great to be able to share that with him as a meaningful pursuit. I know that my friends Kent and Denise, although I haven't seen them in a really long time, I know that their bourbon collection has gone way off the rails. Like, I mean, this is what happens when you don't have children. Like, and God bless them for being able to do this. But the two of them, like the amount of whiskey that they have on hand, it's like, I don't know that I ever want to see it firsthand. Let's just put it that way, okay? Like, because it would be, I would walk in there, look around, and then walk out of that room with like the sad Charlie Brown theme song playing in my just completely hangdog, right? Sad bastard time. So it would be nice to be able to say to this person, I'm not uncomfortable, but I can't meet you there. I can't meet you in that space and have a conversation with you about this. You can have, if you have something that you want to share with like other people here, that's great. But please don't look to me to be able to meaningfully engage in this, because it's a part of my life that's closed off, right? So there's that. The other part of it that is really kind of, I think I've talked about this a little bit before. I don't know if it was on stream or here on the cast, but there was a part of me that is terrified of becoming the alcoholic guy in terms of what people think of me. Like, if you approach me and the very first thing that I say is, hi, I'm Will, I'm an alcoholic, and I'm not at an AA meeting or something analogous to that, where the context is, kind of baked into the surroundings, I feel like that kind of cements me in your head, and I have to do a little bit of work to try to move myself past that. Like, am I a funny guy? Am I an interesting guy? Do I have thoughts and feelings about anything that don't have to do with alcoholism? I mean, we are multifaceted creatures, right? We are not just one thing. We are not just, our flaws. We are our flaws. We are our glories. We are triumphs and victories and sadnesses and angers and moments where we failed. We are all these things. And to consider myself moving into a social dynamic where the very first thing they hear is something that is still stigmatized to this day, that's a little bit like, I've been thinking about that more and more. Like, it had been really easy for me because, to be perfectly honest, I took a kind of pride in being able to say to everybody, hey, I'm an alcoholic in recovery. Like, the whole purpose of me putting this face on this camera is so that we can work to destigmatize it, right? That's the whole point. But there are times when that starts to feel like work, and I'm not always interested in putting in like a ton of work to do that kind of thing. So that's my check-in. I didn't have any cravings this week. I had, to be honest, since Sunday, it's been a lot of go. On Monday, I did a 13-hour day in the operating, not 15 hours, still long. Yesterday, I did a shorter day in the operating room, but didn't sleep all that well the night before. And then last night, I was in bed really, really early, and then I was awake at about 5:45, and after making sure that the boys got ready for school, I put together some Chaos Space Marines, which I'm really digging this model kit. This model kit's been a lot of fun to put together. So we'll talk about that in a little bit though. So rock bottom, what the is rock bottom? Well, my friends, rock bottom is a transitory state where you have moved yourself into a position or been moved into a position where you can't see anything but floor above you, and the climb out of that space, both in terms of what might be physical, but also emotionally, mentally, socially, psychologically, is highly daunting. For me, that moment came on December 15th, 2019, where I got to a place where I was again drunk, waiting for my wife to get home, insanely depressed, about 100 pounds heavier than I am right now, in terrible shape psychologically and physically, and contemplating ending my life. And that was my rock bottom. Now, I didn't have a huge reckoning with the law. I didn't lose any relationships in my rock bottom. Everybody's rock bottom is a little bit different. Like, there are common threads that are woven into every single story of alcoholism or addiction. And oftentimes you can almost like script it out. Like, oh, you started having drinks at the age of this, and then by this age you were having a little bit more problems with it, and then, oh, you missed work because you were hungover. Oh, you drove drunk and got caught for it. Oh, you started to steal for your meth hat. Like, these are all they're almost cliche. They happen so often, but they do happen very, very often. For me, it was on the kind of lighter end of the rock bottom spectrum. Basically what happened was I was feeling suicidal. I made a plan. I stopped myself. I drunkenly stopped myself because I knew it would be my oldest son that would have found me, and that thought terrified me. I had an experience with a mentor figure of mine who killed himself, and I think that it was his oldest son that found him, and I didn't want to do that to my kiddo. Then had what would have been for us a really big fight with my wife. Nothing knocked down or drag out, like, nothing ever got physical. It was a lot of gaslighting and lying. It was a lot of passive aggressive fighting. It was verbal, and it was, ugly for who I am. It was it was me being the type of person that I, now have come to kind of despise. And I think I come to it honestly. I think I come to that place very, very honestly. All right. So that was my rock bottom, basically. The next day into therapy and, working through, the initial stages of my sobriety. So, rock bottom is a transitory state where you can only see floor below you. You can't see a way to move up above you. This is hard. This is so ridiculously difficult. And it's kind of difficult to express to somebody that's never dealt with being at rock bottom. It's also true that you can have many rock bottoms. You'd be surprised how often somebody will be like, listen, I had a rock bottom moment 5 years ago. Then I got sober for a little while. Then about 2 years ago, I had an issue with something pain-wise. And suddenly I'm back on pills. I'm struggling. I'm hitting the bottle again. And where I've gotten to is worse than where I ended up the last time that I hit quote unquote rock bottom. So it's not a definitive place in everybody's life. Hopefully you never need more than one. Hopefully you never need any. But as far as waking up goes, hopefully you never need more than one. So what do you do? What do you do when you hit rock bottom? What do you do? For me, the very first thing that I had to do was heart and head understand that this was a rock bottom moment. It wasn't just another Sunday night for me. This was a terrible, terrible series of events that had culminated in me being exactly the kind of person that I never wanted to be. Ever, ever, ever. And having to admit to myself that I was that type of person. So that's number one. You don't know there's a problem. How can you start to fix it? How can you start to heal if you don't know that you're wounded? at least psychologically. Step 2, you need to ask for help. You need to ask for help hard. And when you do ask for that help, you got to reach out and grasp onto it as tightly as you can and give up any pretense of saving your ego, of saving your self-image. Let your ego fade away for a little while. The ego is an incredibly powerful tool. It can protect you when you need protecting. But when it's protecting you from your own bad decisions, it needs to be set by the wayside. And it's something that's incredibly difficult to do. That's why I said step 1's got to be heart and head. It's got to be an understanding here, psychologically, and it's got to be an understanding here, emotionally. You have to know deep down to your core that you need help. And then you have to ask for that help. Third, surrender to the help. Really surrender to it. If, in my case, I'll give you an example. Step 1 of the getting help was speaking with a primary care physician. The primary care physician asked me a series of questions and drug tested me at the time. I said yes to all of it. I was completely honest with all of it. My wife said, "Hey, can we get a breathalyzer?" I said yes. Now, the first time that I told somebody that I gave my wife the power to breathalyze me anytime she wanted, and I'll show it here on the screen. This is my breathalyzer. I use this thing anytime she asks, and I also use it 3 times a week on our Twitch streams. I gave my wife power to breathalyze me at any point in time because I knew that the damage that I had done to my relationship with her was so severe that if I didn't give her reason to trust me and a way to verify, that I was never going to win that trust back. She needed to be able to verify it. And because she's an amazing human and a wonderful, wonderful wife, the amount of times that she asks me to take tests now, once every 6 months, when she wakes up from a dream and thinks, "Did he drink last night? I can't remember. I don't know if that was a dream." It's usually the extent of it. And that's it. It takes me all of about 45 seconds to do a breathalyzer test. It's really simple. And it lets her verify that her trust is still well placed. Now, when I presented this fact to some people at an AA meeting, they got really uppity at me. In my defense, almost. They were like, I could never let somebody have that kind of power over me. I was like, I don't think you understand. Like, I lost trust. I lost my wife's trust. I lost the trust of my best friend, the person that I said that I was going to never lie to, that I would never treat the way that I treated. She's earned the right to question me, I think. And I think that a lot of people have earned that right to question the people in their lives that have abused them. Because that is a kind of abuse. It's hard not to be abusive when you're an addict. You'll do almost anything in service of your addiction. So we did that, and then it was off to see a behavioral health specialist. And the behavioral health specialist said, do you want to get clean? Do you want to stop drinking? And I said, yes, I want to stop drinking. I want to stop drinking. I don't ever want to feel like this again. And they asked me, they told me that I had basically 3 options. I could go to inpatient therapy, which would be rehab, going to rehab. I could do intense outpatient therapy, which was 3 days a week, 4 hours a day. Or I could do at-home therapy that would be in conjunction with going to meetings and stuff like that. Basically, the softball would have been the third option. My wife looked at me and said, I think that it would be... She asked me, what do I think I should do? And I looked at her and I said, I will do anything that you think is appropriate. If you need me to go to inpatient therapy, I'll do that. If you need me, whatever you want me to do, that's what I'll do. Once again, I gave up all semblance of trying to save myself from myself in terms of my ego. What I wanted was to never feel this way again. And I knew that it was only possible by giving up any semblance of trying to control what my fate was outside of grasping onto that help. So I ended up in intense outpatient therapy. That was what my wife suggested, and I said, yes, I'll do that. And over the next 3 months, I did intense outpatient therapy. I worked on a whole bunch of stuff for myself. Eventually, I decided to make the podcast and the Twitch stream, and this all became, part and parcel of my treatment program. Some of it was quite literally created by me, for me. But when I initially did the podcast and said I was going to do the Twitch stream, I actually talked to my behavioral health physician, and they thought it was such a novel idea that they were completely on board with it. Now, my wife still encourages me to do all this stuff. She's one of our most active listeners. She listens to just about every episode of the show, which I'm eternally grateful for. Honestly, it's like being okay with journaling and knowing that my wife can read it at any time and not being afraid of what she might find there. And I can see that there might be a question in your head. Well, what do you guard anything in terms of what you talk about here? I don't know. If you've been listening to the podcast for a while, I don't guard shit. It all goes up here. It all goes in here. My triumphs, my tribulations, my frustrations, my cravings, all of it. All goes in here. So I think those are the big things when you hit rock bottom. Know that you're in a rock bottom place. Ask for help. And set your ego aside and grasp onto that help and do exactly what it tells you to do. And that can be hard to do sometimes, especially that third one, because what if you're not getting good help? You keep trying. You keep staying away from the bottle, and you keep trying to find that help. And that's my suggestion. That's what I got for our topic tonight. Might revisit this with Ticky next week and see what he thinks about it. We'll see. Games Workshop, man. Games Workshop is a weird company. I recognize that. Much like video game developers, they have to keep churning out new stuff. Like, you can't have... There are a finite amount of people that will play niche games. Very, very finite amount of people that will play niche games. I think it's growing, but I still think it's finite. In order to continue putting out interesting material for these games, they have to keep making stuff for these games. This creates this kind of weird, it's not a loop, it's this linear trajectory of what a company does, where it'll come out with a model and some rules, and you grasp onto those models and rules, and those become almost a part of your identity when you're doing whatever activity it is that you're doing. So in this instance, it's Warhammer 40K. I bought my first Warhammer 40K models when I was about 18 years old. I still have a bunch of them in a box down here, and they're semi-painted. That's right. That's how long it takes me to paint shit. Stuff that I bought when I was 18, still unpainted over here. They still look great though. Games Workshop always had an eye for making a pretty timely model, or a timeless model, excuse me. That was a chair. That was the chair. I promise. I hope you didn't hear it. Maybe you did. Maybe you didn't. So Games Workshop keeps putting out new stuff constantly. It's churning it out. And it puts out new stuff for... I recognize and understand why they put out new stuff. That's a business decision. They have to do that to keep the game company alive. Great. Wonderful. No problem. Between that and selling the IP to every single fucking video game developer and making like 9 shitty Warhammer 40K games for every one decent one, and 20 to 1 for an excellent game. I get it. These are business decisions. It would be really nice if they like tried to pare down the shitty amount of games that come out from their IP, because their IP is glorious. I mean, just thousands and thousands of pages worth of written word, all dedicated to this amazing intellectual property that really does scratch a whole lot of itches. I mean, it scratches the fantasy itch, it scratches the sci-fi itch, it scratches the gothic setting, aliens, triumph of man over beast. Like, so many great books have been written, so many shitty books. Once again, this is another thing where, you know, it's like 3 to 1 shitty to good books. And I've read quite a bit of them, quite a few. So I can tell you that number is pretty accurate. But they got to keep putting out product. Well, the product that they keep putting out, there's this delicate line between making sure that people's previous purchases are still meaningful up to a point, and then introducing new things to the game that are novel and interesting. The problem with that is eventually you start running out of design space to do all this in, right? So you have to start increasing the power levels of the stuff that you're putting out to make the old stuff not feel obsolete, but the new stuff seem fun, interesting, and entertaining, and something that people want to purchase. Now, I primarily collect to paint right now. That's what I'm doing right now. Now, I want to play Kill Team. That looks like a grand old time. I like the skirmish games. I like the 4 to 5 model per side style games. Those are, I think, really, really good, especially when the rules for the game are highly granular and you can really sink your teeth into them. Like, small movements of these models make, all the difference because of the granularity in the rules. Well, they've now come to a place where the lore that they've established over the last 30 years, almost 40 years worth of gameplay development, are seemingly feeling like they're coming to a head. And they're starting to release figures, and by figures, I mean literally miniature figures. So this guy up here in the left-hand corner, the Lion L. Johnson, the Primarch of the Dark Angels, is such a beautiful freaking model. So that's a figure, but a figure in the lore that has been basically asleep in the story for 10,000 years. They're having these like bang on moments of, well, this 10,000-year-old dude is waking up, and this 10,000-year-old dude is waking up, and this 60-million-year-old dude is waking up, and this giant threat is coming in from off screen, and this other thing is happening, and this thing's happening, and it's like back and forth all over the place. So what was kind of a slow progression in the lore that was my origin in this game has now sped up to such an extent that it almost feels like a serialized television show. Like, and we're just waiting for the next season and what the next cliffhanger is going to be. And oh my God, is that character going to die? So it's like a really interesting time to be around for this kind of game, but it's also a little bit frustrating because all of this atmosphere is being kind of torn down. I mean, this was a game where technology didn't advance. Technology couldn't advance because the state, and by the state I mean the imperium of mankind, the governing body, is such an ass backwards, regressive, oppressive, terrible system of governance that even looking to change any of the part, it's like not even a quasi religious order. It's a full on like religious, like theocracy. So any change to any of the technology is considered heresy. Well, they just, like a couple of years ago, retconned that. So, or not retconned it, but basically introduced a new character that was going to blow through all of that, old rigmarole and say, you know what, we're done. We're done with all of this heresy stuff. And it's changing the tenor and tone of the game. And I don't know if that change is a good change yet. I feel like something drastic has to be done in the storyline to make that oppressive feeling of everybody against the humans, because there's like 15 different factions, like 15 or 18 or 20 different factions or something, and like out of those, 10 of them are human factions and everything else is an alien. Everything else wants to kill the humans for one reason or another. So there's always this feeling that at any point in time, the Imperium of Man could collapse. Well, I think it would be a really good idea if the Imperium of Man did collapse. I think that story-wise, you would be able to get so much more out of a new conflict that was bred from the ashes of what the storyline was, which is coming to this what seems like a almost victorious end for the Empire of Man. Like, I don't think you can do that. This is a grim, dark setting. This is a setting that is highly oppressive. It, like, you read the books, you look through the books, the symbolism of all of the religiosity, the fact that everybody's a heretic, that there's a literal inquisition that happens, that living conditions for bog standard humanity are absolute garbage. Like, the whole point of this setting is to make you feel like you're leading a army in this time of massive oppression. And it's I know that it sounds like awful to describe it like that, but the game setting is fun to imagine. It's very, very fun to imagine. The conflict is very fun to imagine. Like, the tagline for the game is, in the grim darkness of the far future, there is only war. That's it. That's all there is. Thank you, British people, for dumping this in our lap. Because, I don't know. I'm a big fan. I'm obviously a big fan. I could wax philosophical. I tried to tell my wife the story of the Emperor of Mankind and the fall and the Horus Heresy, and she tried to keep up for a little while, but she definitely started to get the same kind of eyes that most sexist men get when their wives start talking about shoe shopping. You know what I'm talking about? Shoe shopping. Terribly sexist. Terribly sexist, you guys. Don't do it. Don't do it. She says she wants to get some new shoes. You pay attention, all right? Let her put something fun and jaunty on them doggies down there. Yeah, absolutely. So, anyways, it was going to be a shorty. It was always going to be a shorty tonight. This wasn't going to be a long episode by any means or standard. Man, just looking at that picture. If you can see, let's see if I can. I don't know if. No, I can't do that. Oh well. If you can see the picture up in the YouTube, if not, go Google the Lion L. Johnson. It's a beautiful friggin' model. Really does look like Tywin Lannister from the Game of Thrones series on HBO. Although nothing like the character from the books. The character from the books was bald. Charles Dance is not bald. He is big, imposing, and so wonderfully, wonderfully British. Anyways, all right, guys, that's going to be it for tonight's episode. But like every episode, whether Ticky and Steve are here or not, we've got some mutual support groups that we're going to shout out so that you can find some help in your time of need. So when you hit rock bottom, you have somewhere that you can reach out to. Alcoholics Anonymous, AA, tried, trusted, not so trendy. 212-870-3400 or AA.org. Moderation Management, www.moderation.org. 212-871-0974. Secular AA, that's aasecular.org. 323-693-1633. Smart Recovery, smartrecovery.org. 440-951-5357. And Women for Sobriety, womenforsobriety.org. 215-536-8026. And for friends and family that need a little help in a group type environment, there's Al-Anon family groups. That's al-anon.alateen.org or 1-888-425-2666. Next week, we'll have something for the topic of alcoholism. That might just be a recap of what we talked about tonight, and we're probably gonna have Ticky's takes. So he's got another terrible movie. I don't know what it is. I don't want to know what it is. It makes my ears, eyes, heart, and colon all bleed to think about what movies he watches when the lights go out. I'm not a fan of them, but I am a fan of supporting my friend in his terrible, terrible habit. Terrible habit. But from all of us here at the Safe vs. Poison podcast, I hope you guys stay safe and sober if you need to. And if not, enjoy your moderation, because that's a fucking superpower to me. Warm, creamy regards, everybody. Good night. You've just listened to another episode of the Save vs. Poison podcast. If you liked what you heard, please follow us, like, and subscribe on Twitter at @VS_save, on Facebook at the Save vs. Poison podcast, and streaming live on Twitch at twitch.tv/SVP podcast. Thanks so much for joining us, and stay safe, everyone.